We are going to discuss a new poem. The name of the poem is The Shed. This poem was written by Frank Flynn. And children, before we are going to discuss this poem, let us discuss the word shed. Children, what is shed? Have you seen shed? Do you know what a shed is? A cow shed, a tool shed, a wood shed. So there are many kinds of sheds. So it's a small room, children, away from the main house. For what purpose are we using this shed? To store or keep things, animals, tools, vehicles, and etc. Am I right? For these purpose, we have the shed. Okay, there is a cow shed and there is a tool shed and there is a wood shed, and so many sheds are there in many homes. Okay. And here the poet Frank Flynn says something about the shed. So let us discuss, children. In the end of this poem, you will be able to know what the poet is trying to say about the shed. Okay. So before I'm going to read and explain this poem, let me say the summary of this poem. In this poem, there is a shed at the bottom of the poet's garden, and the poet wishes to visit it one day. There is a spider's web on the door of the shed, and its hinges are rusty and creak when the wind blows. The poet often thinks about it while lying in his bed. On one side of the shed, there is a dusty window, and 3 of its window panes are broken. Okay, so the poet feels as if someone stares at him through the window, and whenever the poet visits the shed, he would like to find out who lives there. The poet's brother informs him that a ghost lives inside the shed, and if the poet dares to enter the shed, the ghost would chop off his head. Despite these warnings, the poet wishes to visit the shed and peep inside. And the poet believes that his brother tells his imaginative stories about the ghost, as he wants to keep the shed for himself. The poet no longer feels anyone staring at him or hears any strange noises coming from the shed. The spider, too, is no longer there. Thus, very soon, he would go inside the shed. Okay, so this is a summary of this poem, children. Now, let me read all the stanzas. So, there are 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 stanzas. First, I will read this poem one time. Then, I will explain stanza by stanza. Okay, the shed. There is a shed at the bottom of our garden with a spider's web hanging across the door. The hinges are rusty and creak in the wind. When I am in bed, I lie and I listen. I will open that door one day. There is a dusty old window around at the side with 3 cracked panes of glass. I often think there is someone staring at me each time that I pass. I'll peep through that window one day. My brother says there is a ghost in the shed who hides under the rotten floorboards. And if I ever dare to set foot inside, he'll jump out and chop off my head. But I'll take a peek one day. I know that there isn't really a ghost. My brother tells lies to keep the shade for his den. There isn't anyone staring or making strange noises, and the spider has been gone for his web since I don't know when. I'll go into that shed one day soon, but not just yet. By Frank Flynn. Let me explain the first stanza, children. There is a shed at the bottom of our garden with a spider's web hanging across the door. The hinges are rusty and creak in the wind. When I am in bed, I lie and I listen. I'll open that door one day. The poet in these lines is describing a shed that is at the bottom of his garden. Okay, at the bottom of his garden, children, there is a shade. Okay, hardly anybody goes inside the shade. Therefore, the hinges or the door joints have become rusty and make a lot of noise whenever the wind makes them move. When the poet is peacefully lying in the bed, he sometimes hears noises from the shed. The poet wishes to be able to open the door of the shed someday. Okay, moving to the second stanza. There is a dusty old window around at the side with 3 cracked panes of glass. I often think there is someone staring at me each time that I pass. I'll peep through that window one day. The poet discusses how he wishes to stare inside the shed here. And here, children, the shed has a dusty old window on its side. Okay, 3 glass panes of the window are broken. Whenever the poet passes through the shed, he gets the feeling as if someone was staring at him. Okay, so to find out, the poet wishes to peep inside the shed. Moving to the third stanza. My brother says there is a ghost in the shed who hides under the rotten floorboards. And if I ever dare to set foot inside, he'll jump out and chop off my head, but I'll take a peek one day. In these lines, the poet discusses how his brother warns him about the ghost inside the shed. Okay, the poet's brother talks about the presence of the ghost inside the shed and warns the poet that if he went inside the shed, the ghost would chop off his head. So that's why the poet was getting frightened here. So however, this doesn't much frighten the poet. He still wished to one day step inside the shed and see for himself. Okay? Moving to the fourth stanza, children. I know that there isn't really a ghost. My brother tells lies to keep the shed for his den. There isn't anyone staring or making strange noises, and the spider has been gone from his web since I don't know when. I'll go into that shed one day soon, but not just yet. Here, the poet in these lines seems to have grown enough to understand the truth, children. The poet is able to overcome his fears. He is able to understand that there is no ghost inside the shed. He understands that there is actually nobody inside the shed who stares at him or makes those strange noises. Okay, the spider too is no longer there, children. His brother had been telling his lie because he wanted to retain the shed for his own self. Okay, therefore, very soon the poet would be able to set in food inside the shed. So finally, the poet would be able to set inside food in the shed, children. However, he says that this cannot happen immediately. Okay. So do you understand, children? This is the poem was written by Frank Flynn. Do you understand? I hope you understood. Now, children, let us know some of the new words from this poem. Words and meanings are given here. Web, spider's web. Hinge, hinges, a joint. Pans, a sheet of glass. Staring, to look fixedly. Peep, which means peek. Rotten, in a state of decay. Okay. Peek, which means to see. Okay, children. So I hope you understood. In this poem, the poet expresses his fear by saying that he feels as if someone stares at him each time he passes that place. Okay.